For new whiskey drinkers, it's really easy to get caught up in the stereotypes of what or how you should be drinking. Now, I got into whiskey when I was 18 and I thought of myself as a bit of a connoisseur, but really I just didn't know what I didn't know. 20 years later, there's a lot of things I now know that could have really improved my whiskey journey, from the whiskies I drank to what I got out of the experience. So I'm Nath Martyn, the Whisky Scribe, and I'm going to take you through 6 things I wish I knew about whiskey when I was in my 20s. Now let's start with at least trying your whiskey neat. Now there's nothing wrong with drinking whiskey on the rocks or in a cocktail if that's what you prefer, but once you put ice in, it does change the whiskey. The cold temperature closes off some of the flavors, and as it melts it dilutes the whiskey, and it can't be undone. Once you put an ice cube in a whiskey, if you take it out, that whiskey has already changed, there's no going back. I'm not saying I never should have sat back and enjoyed a whiskey on the rocks, but I wish, at least for some of the more expensive whiskies, that I first tried them neat, just to see if I liked it better that way. So if you are somebody who enjoys your whiskey on the rocks, do yourself a favor and the next time you buy a new bottle, at least just pour out the first glass neat and just see if you like it. Next, age isn't everything. It's really easy to fall for the marketing pitch of a high age statement. And in my early days, I did think that a 12-year-old whiskey was good, a 15-year-old whiskey was better, 18 was better than that, and that it kept on going up. But a high age statement doesn't immediately equal a quality whiskey. And no age statement also doesn't mean that it's a low quality whiskey. Now, as whiskey remains in the barrel, you reach this point of diminishing returns, sort of around 18 to 25 years. At that point, the whiskey's not getting better, or at least it's not getting better at the same rate that the price is going up. And that's because whiskey evaporates when it's in the barrel. So by the time a whiskey has been aging for 18 years, half of that barrel has evaporated. Now, distillers used to call this, romantically, the angel's share. It was the portion of whiskey that the angels took for a drink. Thirsty bastards. But regardless, it means that by the time a whiskey is 18 years or older, there's a lot less of it. There are less bottles going to be in existence, and that's where that price comes in. So a lot of what you're paying for with an 18 or older whiskey is rarity. The fact that there's fewer bottles in existence, and that the distillers need to recoup the cost of all the time spent in the barrel taking up warehouse space. And young and non-age statement whiskies are also great. Some of my favourite whiskies are whiskies that have no age statement. Things like Talisker Portree, a lot of the Octomore series, as well as the Auchentoshan Bartender's Malt. There is nothing wrong with blends. This is another stereotype that whiskey drinkers sometimes fall for, the belief that a single malt whiskey is better than a blended whiskey. And in my 20s, I thought I was incredibly sophisticated because I only drank single malt. I wasn't sophisticated. I was a dummy. I was missing out on some really good blended whiskies. If you want to know more about the differences between single malts and blends and why some whiskey drinkers prefer one over another, I have done another video on this, and the origins of the whole thing might surprise you. But the takeaway should be to just explore both. Next, whiskey goes with food. Did you know this? I didn't know this. No one told me this. Did you know whiskey goes with food? Now, I loved drinking wine before I got into whiskey. And I think part of it was because wine goes so well with food. But I never really thought to mix food with whiskey. I always treated it as a separate experience. I would have dinner before or after I had a few drams of whiskey. But food goes sensationally with whiskey. Things like meat and apple and cheeses can sometimes complement a whiskey. And there are even really specific combinations that work. For instance, I do not like blue cheese, but a blue cheese paired with a peated whiskey is fantastic. Next is to explore other regions. Now, when I first got into whiskey, I was very much a Scotch drinker. I've since branched out and explored other regions, and one of which is Japan. Now, at the time I first started drinking, Japanese whiskey was actually relatively cheap, and it's because people hadn't discovered it yet. But when I did, it was right about the time that everyone else started discovering it. Japanese whiskey had started winning awards, it was getting recognized, and so the price was going up. So for instance, the first Japanese whiskey I tried was a Kushu 12-year-old, which was a beautiful whiskey, and at $90 at the time was an absolute steal. But that same whiskey is now $400 a bottle. So I could have been drinking some really high quality whiskey for a real low price. I just didn't know. Now, Australian and Japanese whiskey has already experienced this recognition-based price increase, which is great. There's value there. They are good whiskies. But somewhere in the world, there is a country's first distillery that's just trying to get its whiskey out in the market. It might not be sensational, but could also end up being the next big whiskey region. And you won't know unless you explore. So get out there and try different regions. And lastly, whiskey is better shared. Now, although I was interested in whiskey when I was 18, 19, none of my friends were. So I didn't get a chance to explore it, to go through and find out all these things that I've just gone through. Now, when you're enjoying and exploring whiskey and going through it with others who share this passion, it just heightens the whole experience. You'll try things you wouldn't otherwise try. People will make recommendations based on things they know you like. And you'll just find this camaraderie with people who share this passion. I don't know why, but if I found a whiskey I love, I enjoy it even more if I can pour a glass for somebody else and see them enjoy it too. So that's it. That's 6 things I wish I knew about whiskey when I was in my 20s. Let me know in the comments if there's something you wish you knew earlier and how it would have changed your whiskey journey. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you want to see more, hit the subscribe button and enjoy what's in your glass and slange. "20 years later, there are a lot of things I now know that could have really... Say that line again, Nathan. We all want to hear it. Blah. Trying your whiskey neat. Yeah, try it neat. The whiskey doesn't really get much better, or it doesn't get... Greetings, whiskey. Stay there.
Stay there.
Diana,
Diana.
stay.
Stay.
Stay. Look here. Look this camera.
Hey, go look at this one. Good job.